Good morning, Zaina. Please introduce yourself and we will take it from there.
Good morning. My name is Zaina Erhaim. I'm a Syrian journalist and communication expert working on different projects in the MENA region.
Thank you so much for joining us on this special MEP series focused on gender-based violence. This particular series will home into the topic of online harassment. But before we get into this, I wanted to ask you how you define gender-based violence and how do you see GBV in the MENA region?
I believe it is any harmful act or suppression applied on individual or groups based on their sexual orientation or how they define their own bodies. That's how I would see it. And how I see the situation in the MENA, that's a question for a book, I believe, a big research. In general, as a woman who is from that region and is working with other women who are living there, I believe we're still in the very first steps of advocating for our existence, for our rights, for defining what is violence and what is not, and for stopping against what is violence. So I believe we are in that stage in terms of laws, in terms of patriarchal communities, in terms of how many suppressors do we have in our lives. That is scary in our context, sadly.
It is absolutely scary, and unfortunately, a lot of incidents have been on the rise since the COVID-19 pandemic. So now, sort of zooming into the topic of online harassment as a form of gender-based violence, is there awareness in general, but specifically in the region, that this is truly one way to, is considered a form of gender-based violence?
There are many campaigns and many feminist groups that are trying to raise awareness, mainly on social media, many individual initiatives. Specifically, I can think about Egypt and Morocco, and there is also one in Iraq. They are trying to define what is gender-based violence, define what is it allowed and not allowed for a person to send you on Facebook. Even if you're a public figure, what's accepted, what's not, because we came into a stage where we consider all of these awful sexual pictures that are sent into our inbox as just a side effect of being a public figure, without realizing how wrong is that, but be just dealing with it. And I wrote a piece about what women journalists in MENA region specifically face. And online harassment was one of the main elements. And one of them literally had to shut off all her social media accounts and presence online and created a fake account. In its bio, she wrote, "I am not me." So, and she is a very powerful public figure. She's Nawara Najm from Egypt. So for Nawara Najm to disappear from public space because of harassment and bullying, because I think they come together, and there is something that is created. I'm not sure whether it exists in the West, but the systematic campaigns of bullying and harassment together, you feel it's like a wave hitting every woman who dare to get out of a taboo or challenge a tradition or just to speak out or come out. And I think it also applies on the LGBTQ as well, who are trying to come out of their closets.
Absolutely. And I have followed other stories of women journalists who have spoken very openly about the type of harassment that they have been subject to. Why do you think women journalists in particular are targeted? Is it because they are, like you said, trying to basically challenge the status quo on these issues publicly?
There are many reasons, I think. First, they are women. They are invading very masculine public spaces. They exist online, which is still considered to be like a very much restricted area and men-dominated area, because we're expected as women to have our kids' pictures with the name of our husbands or fathers in. So even the name is still an issue. Not to mention that we're the lucky ones who have internet to exist at all. Not to mention all the others who don't even have this luxury. And above that, they have opinions. And this is also not accepted in our communities. We're not expected to have opinions and then to express it. So there is a big package of taboos that every woman journalist, even the one who is covering stereotypical women-related issues, is breaking. And as a result, she would be expecting to get the systematic harass and bullying campaigns.
Yeah, I can imagine how stressful that is, but also how courageous a lot of these women are. One of these women who has, pushed the envelope is yourself, Zaina, the first woman in your province in Syria, in Idlib, to study journalism and practice journalism. So how do you think your background as a journalist, but also in communications, can help you better understand what is happening in the online space with regards to gender-based harassment?
It is very complicated. I can't claim that I understand what's happening, but I can see what the results are, and I can understand why more and more women who have opinions, or even like non-binary people who don't fit with the specific categories of our communities, are leaving this space because it became too toxic to be able to survive. And then we had, I know many who, like me, had this setback asking, does it deserve all the kind of energy and efforts that we're putting? Many of us reach a stage where we're questioning our abilities, we're questioning our expertise, we're questioning our opinions, from like fake names and people who don't have any other backgrounds, who are not on the same intellectual level to challenge you. But then when you have 100 accounts saying the same thing about you, you tend to believe that things.
Yeah.
So I believe many setbacks have happened. For me, what saved me and kept me on this public space is the MENA Feminist Network of support, the Egyptian, Iraqis, and Lebanese women. And I was so happy to work with a Lebanese woman on the sexual harassment case, and then an Egyptian woman on another journalist, another harassment case. I think maybe getting away from our own bubble of misery into others, it makes it easier for both of us.
Of course.
So I think for me, that might be one of the way forwards. And whenever I'm seeing any other feminist being bullied or attacked, I try sometimes, if I have time, to respond on her behalf, because I know the kind of mental state that she is at that moment, and how much it means for her, and it supports her to keep going. I get asked many times, why are you still there? And for me, if I get back, and all of those who are not popularist and saying what our communities want us to say are getting back, this space is going to be completely sexist, masculine, disinformation, and all the other things that we don't want it to be.
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I'm very impressed that there is this community that has come together to support each other, but also to help address the issues and speak up as you are. And speaking of some of the sort of policies that can be moved forward or discussed, do you believe that anti-harassment laws in the MENA region, and of course there are variances across the region when it comes to anti-harassment laws, but where there are anti-harassment laws, because in Egypt there has been a lot of work to try to move forward, and Parliament recently also passed one that's related to work. But are these also inclusive of online activity? Are there examples where legal action has been taken with an online harassment case, and how can these cases, if they do exist, sort of serve us to better see how we can move forward to addressing this problem on a larger scale?
I'm not a legal expert, but from what I'm seeing now, even the laws that actually made it to the parliament and made it to our constitutions, when it comes to an influential sexual harasser, even if it's not online, even if it's physical, a rape attempt, he would get away with it. We learned two big examples in Egypt where the witnesses and the victims themselves were taken into court. And the online harassment happened against the victims. So the victim who dared to report being harassed, she had to face her pictures being leaked, her videos being exposed to the internet. So, I mean, even if the laws are there are plenty of other tools of suppression that the community and the government still have to suppress such cases from going into life. And on the other hand, we still have the very well-known sexual harassers who harass online, and the print screens of their messages were put online, but they're still being celebrated as a great footballers or still being suppressed as an investigative journalists without, like, they're still accepted. There is not even like a boycotting or any kind of action.
Yeah.
So I
There's
believe
no backlash.
I believe laws and social norms go back to back, but now if you follow the discussion around like the MENA online platforms, they feel like, oh, the feminists are becoming like a wave of angry women attacking every man, and in many cases they are unlawfully or unjustifiably attacking men. And they're becoming all of these support groups for the harassers, attacking the victims and helping out to discredit them. So I sadly, I don't see any improvements, maybe very tiny steps towards naming what harassment is. And I think the greatest work that is done is again by grassroots initiatives and women and groups who are documenting, putting them online, collecting stories, and even journalists trying to write investigative pieces about them.
Yeah, thank you for that. You mentioned women's groups a few times, and so I'm not going to go back to this question, but I want to go back to see if these women groups coming together are trying to talk to the tech industry to at least start a conversation to see, well, what is the role of the tech sector to prevent online harassment, and how can you push that forward?
I know many trieds, and I know even some MENA internet activism platforms have did some consultancies with feminist groups and try to take it further. But me personally, I don't believe in a business modules. Eventually, the platforms that we're dealing with, they're all business oriented. And as we're seeing recently as a proof, they are not the human rights. Their concerns about human rights are not very serious. There are plenty of famous cases, like Ghada Awais, I think it's the most famous in the MENA region, Al Jazeera host, an anchor. I think she's updating how many accounts that she's blocking on daily basis, and despite that, Twitter did nothing. Yesterday, they even Facebook restricted Diana Mqallid. She is one of the most prominent Lebanese and Arabic journalists and feminists. So I think they're not just trying to stop the harassment; they're actually harassing those few voices who are trying to counter the online harassments on these spaces, and by taking the platforms away from them. It happened with two Lebanese journalists last week that I was aware of. So imagine how many others that were not. So I'm not sure what we can actually achieve by speaking with the tech companies, but I'm sure if they have the real intention, they can certainly help keeping this space, or at least making this space a bit more human rights and gender equity friendly for
and safer. Yeah, absolutely. It seems that there is a very large gap in communications between especially some of these big tech companies and others, particularly women's groups who are working not only in the MENA region, but globally with the Me Too campaign and others. So it is definitely an avenue worth exploring.
And specifically within our MENA context, what is, I still feel that it's not known for the tech companies, is that actually a leaked picture can get a woman killed. It's not just getting her ashamed or people spitting on her the street. It can actually get her killed. We have cases where women had to disappear because someone faked a face app, something on her, and put it as a video of her on Facebook. So it is that serious, but it's not taken as much seriously as it should be.
Absolutely. It's a matter of life and death. Thank you for taking us to this world and to better understand, well, what is going on and how women's groups are working together and supporting each other. What is one thought you want to leave the audience with during the 16 days of activism that we all should be aware of? If there's one thought that you want to highlight to our viewers, what would it be?
For me personally, I think realizing the struggle, addressing it, and addressing the privileges that each of us have while witnessing or while observing the other's struggle is very essential. And I would like, specifically because your audience is English speakers, address your position, your passport, your location, and how is that affecting your views about the others. It is very essential. Asking those who are in the situation, speak to them instead of speaking about them. I think it is really essential. And eventually just deal with the women activist as a human rights activist without the superiority of the post-colonized kind of attitude. This is, for me, is very essential as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for being part of our gender-based violence series as part of the 16 days of activism. And we hope we can continue the conversation on this very important topic. Thank you, Zaina.
Thank you for hosting me.